An Islander man was captured at the Gustavo Rojas Pinilla airport when he was entering the island from a flight coming from the city of Cartagena at around 2:30 in the afternoon. The authorities have so far not provided information on the possible causes of the capture. And with images circulating on social media, a forest fire is observed in a wooded area of the island. The first versions pointed at the fact that it is at Velolias Road. The fire department, until the beginning of this broadcast, has not pronounced itself as to the degree of damage to the sector by the fire or recommendations to take into account in this time of drought in which we find ourselves. The community is also advised to avoid burning debris during the season. And in other news, a serious accident occurred in the morning hours on the Newbile Avenue. The crash between motorcycles left a person with mild craniocephalic trauma with injury to the left temporal parietal region, injury to the posterior region of the neck, closed chest trauma with pulmonary contusion, left clavicle fracture, and trauma to the left lower limb. However, the medical report states that the person injured is stable. The injuries on the other person are still unknown. However, the medical report states that the injured person's health condition is stable. This March 13, Rice Island residents are summoned to the polls to elect the Senate and House of Representatives. Here in Teleislas News, we will tell you which will be the voting points and the electoral roll.
The archipelago is ready for the legislative elections where the Senate and House of Representatives will be elected for the period 2022-2026. Data from the National Registrar's Office indicate that 51,385 citizens will be able to vote in the islands. 26,684 are women and 24,701 men. 7 voting stations are enabled in San Andres and 1 in all provinces. For the municipality, it will be at the Junin School with 13 tables and 78 jurors. For the Department of San Andres, it is the Luis Amigo School with 27 tables and 162 jurors. Natania School with 22 tables and 132 jurors. Bolivariano Institute with 47 tables and 282 jurors. Brooks Hill School with 15 tables and 90 jurors. The Esfuerzo School with 6 tables and 36 jurors. San Luis Coliseum with 13 tables and 78 jurors, and the New Hope Prison with 1 table and 6 jurors. For these elections, 13 candidates are competing for 2 seats in the House of Representatives for the island.
And with only 2 days before the elections to the Congress of the Republic, we want to walk you through the voting procedure.
For these elections 2022, the Registrar's Office on the island reiterates the importance of knowing clearly for whom you will vote, the political party to which it belongs, and the number of the candidate, taking into account that for these elections there are open and closed lists. In order to correctly mark each electoral card, you must take into account whether you want to vote for a list or for a candidate. If you are voting for a list, you must mark with an X over the logo of the political party of your preference. If the choice is for a candidate, you must mark with an X over the number of the candidate and over the logo of the political party to which he or she belongs. If the choice is the blank vote, you must mark with an X on that option. It is important to reiterate that marking more than one zone will invalidate the vote. On this issue, the delegate clarified.
When you go to the table, they will ask you which ballot card you want for the Senate. There are 2, the ordinary and the indigenous. You will only have the right to receive 1. There are 3 ballots for the House of Representatives. You only have the right to 1, and it is optional, voluntary if you request the consultation ballot. You will not be able to go to the ballot box with 3 ballots for the House and 2 for the Senate, nor with the 3 consultation ballots.
The ballot boxes will be separated in the same way by the House of Representatives, Senate, and consultation. In the case of making a mistake at the time of marking, the citizens may request a new replacement card from the voting jurors. The voter must return the wrongly filed out electoral card and verify that the jury annuls it. It It is also important to emphasize citizens' punctuality to exercise their right to vote before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, since the voting tables close at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If there are still citizens in line, they will not be able to vote after that time.
And with the intention of motivating voters, the National Register's Office announced the benefits that citizens will be able to access with the voting certificate, which is delivered for exercising their right to vote.
Among the benefits, there are 10% discount in the value of the initial procedure and its issuance of duplicates of the military ID. Also, 1 month will be discount from the mandatory time of military service in the case of soldiers or auxiliary high school graduates, and 2 months will be discounts if they are peasant or irregular soldiers. There will also be a 10% discount from the second duplicate in the citizenship cards and in the issuance of passport during 4 years following the vote. This 10% may be only used one time. One of the most appreciable benefits for young Colombians is the 10% discount on tuition fees for students of higher education institutions. One of the recent incentives framed in Law 815 of 2003, different incentives are also offered for higher education. In addition, those who vote in the elections are tied in the result to enter a public or private higher education institution will have a priority of preference in the selection process. Finally, another of the most striking benefits for the Colombian is that they will be granted a half day of rest or compensatory time to compensate the time used by the voter to exercise his or her right to vote.
And much attention that the departmental government issued Decree 0124 of March 9, 2022, through which preventive measures are taken with respect to the next March 13 elections.
The decree restricts the sale and consumption of intoxicating beverages in the department from 6 p.m. on Saturday, March 12 until 6 a.m. on March 14. Likewise, any infringement of the provision of this decree will be subject to corrective measures by the mayor and governor of the territory. Similarly, the realization of massive celebrations such as cultural, sporting, and other similar events with affluence is restricted in order to maintain public order from 6 o'clock in the afternoon of March 12 until 6 o'clock in the morning of March 14. Finally, the decree stated that the police will monitor the entire street of the department and invite the community to maintain all biosecurity protocols.
And in other news, the National Navy will deploy a security device to guarantee that the elections to the House of Representatives and Senate of the Republic take place in total order and without alteration.
Lieutenant Colonel Harlinson Quiroga Polania, commander of the Marine Infantry Battalion No. 11, announced that a security device was deployed with the objective of guaranteeing security in the legislative elections and presidential consultations.
Bueno, el Comando Específico de San Andrés y Providencia.
The specific command of San Andres and Providence is getting ready for the celebration of democracy. For that are the units of the specific command, the units of the Air Force, our National Army, the National Navy, therefore are preparing to be able to comply with the Department of San Andres to have a free and peaceful elections where people can exercise their right to vote.
The members of the Marine Corps will be deployed in the different voting stations in the department.
En San Andrés tenemos 7 puntos.
In San Andres, we have 7 voting stations, and in Providence, 1 voting station. All of them will have the presence of the National Police and of the public force. We are also going to offer accompaniment to all the control entities verifying the elections.
With approximately 400 men, the armed forces expect to guarantee the security of the people of the islands of San Andres, Providence, and Catalina, who will elect their new representatives to the Congress of the Republic.
And these elections represent the first election campaign of 2022, in which senators, representatives to the Chamber of Deputies, and presidential candidates will be elected. Here we will tell you what documents you need to vote.
During the voting process, citizens will elect the new congressional representatives who will occupy the different seats in the Senate and the House of Representatives. The inter-party consultation will also be held to choose the presidential candidates of the Pacto Histórico, the Centro Esperanza, and the Equipo por Colombia. These are not mandatory, since each Colombian may choose for whom he/she will vote. What do I need to vote? To vote, the only thing you need is your original citizenship card. Since you arrive at the polls, it will be the first thing you will be asked for. When they confirm your information, they will give you 2 ballots, one for the Senate and for the national constituency, and one for the House of Representatives for the territorial constituency. It is important to mention that for these elections, you do not need the ochre to exercise your right to vote. How to vote? However, for both the Senate and the House of Representatives, there is a possibility of changing the voting card for the special constituencies, which are for the Senate, only the special indigenous constituency, and for the House, the special Afro or indigenous. But it's up to you to tell the voting jury to give you any of these special cards that replace the national and territorial cards in each case. In all the ballots, there will be 2 types of lists, one preferential vote list and one closed non-preferential vote list. If your vote is for a closed list, you will only have to check the box for that the movement, which will be empty. On the other hand, if you want to vote for an open list, you must mark the party logo and the number of the candidate that appears on the right side of the next party image.
Biosecurity protocols must be strictly complied with by the voters as they exercise their voting rights.
Voters must strictly comply with the biosecurity protocols when exercising their right to vote. Although it was already been announced that the vaccination card will not be a requirement to vote, the community is reminded that COVID-19 is still active in the department and therefore it is necessary to comply with the protocols within the voting centers. Persons wishing to vote must wear their respective masks. At the polling places, there will be elements for hand disinfection. In addition, it is also reminded to keep the proper distance. It is extremely important to comply with the protocols since the objective is to carry out the processes in the best possible way without setbacks.
I know the road closures and the tours that will take place in San Andres for the legislative elections to be held on March 13th.
According to the most recent report from the Secretariat of Mobility for the Congressional and House of Representatives elections, there will be some road closures and checkpoints in San Andres to guarantee the vehicular flow during the elections.
Los puntos de votación, donde vamos a contar obviamente.
At the voting points where we are going to have the presence of traffic agents to ensure that there is no reduction in mobility, taking into account that it is a day of heavy congestion, both pedestrian and traffic. Indeed, circulation will be restricted at some points, such as Natania School and Bolivariano School, which are points of greater agglomeration where the largest population that will come to vote is registered. The other points will be managed with the support of the police, with traffic agents and traffic regulators. I invite all to self-control and self-regulation in terms of respect and tolerance on the roads.
The Secretariat of Mobility recommends citizens to exercise their right to vote in the early hours of the morning in order to avoid traffic flow problems during the voting period.
And at this time, we continue with Millicent O'Neill and the news of the municipality of Old Providence and Santa Catalina.
Good evening to all our viewers. This is the most relevant information from Old Providence and Catalina. Several families report that they do not like the idea of having galvanized houses built for them, especially near the sea. According to these victims, those in charge want to force them to receive these houses.
Some of the hurricane victims in Old Providence do not like the galvanized houses. Nubia Dawkins, whose concrete house was demolished, says that she does not want a house of this type so close to the sea.
When they threw down my house, they said they were going to build it out of cement with 4 rooms and 2 bathrooms. And now, Saturday, they come and said they're going to give me an iron house. And I make them know I don't want no iron house. Because I am too close to the bay and I don't want no iron house. I want my 4 rooms and my 2 bathrooms, but then it promised me when they threw down my house.
On the other hand, according to the Livingston family, they did not have the opportunity to choose the type of house. And the galvanized house they're offering them would be built in salt water.
When they returned, they were imposing the Type 2 house. Our request is that they change that typology to a board house as it was before, as our original house, but they refuse. They say no. The excavations were done, and as you can see, the house was built in salt water. As you can see, this soil is swampy and everything is splitting. That is salt water that's filtrating there. We even had an accident here.
The family asked for a house made of wood.
When we didn't accept the Type 2 house, they threatened us and told us that we will be left without a house.
These families request for help in the solution of their housing problem.
On the other hand, several meetings were held by some leaders of recreational fishing organizations in Colombia with the Fishermen's Federation to propose a catch and release project.
Sport fishing can be an option for fishermen in Old Providence, especially in closed season as proposed by sports fishermen who, together with the Fishermen Federation, explored catch and release as a probable alternative model for fishing on the islands.
The idea of meeting with these guys is to start with the whole idea of sports fishing here in the island with catch and release. I didn't know too much before about the island, but when I studied it a bit, I noticed that you have all the big species here. There's tarpon, there's bonefish, robalo, there's even permit probably, but I didn't see it. And you guys don't fish them, you don't eat them. So why don't you use them for sport fish to generate a lot of extra income for the island?
In Providence, sport fishermen could find what is called the Grand Slam, 4 fishes in one spot, for which they would pay thousands of dollars for a week of fishing.
I think we can help create a business unit, a sport fishing tourism operation, helping to professionalize the native fishermen in fly fishing so that we can attract Colombian and international tourists who want to come and fish.
For now, the model of fishing that is already being used in countries such as Belize, Bahamas, Honduras, and Mexico is being studied by the Fishermen Federation to see if they can adapt it in the municipality.
This is all the information we have for tonight for this section of Old Providence and Catlina. Continue in San Andres with more Teleislas News. Good night.